Hey guys, I've noticed an uptick in this group lately of people who are new to woodworking who want to take courses on woodworking and whatnot. And part of that is learning how to use a tool safely and what to watch out for certain ones. So I'm going to make a quick video and just in case you don't have either the money to take a course or you got some tools and you're going to start using them but you're new to them, or maybe you're seasoned and you never thought of certain things before. But yeah, I think it's part of our due diligence as woodworkers to share new woodworkers and other people safety tips and stuff. And so here it is. Those were the reasons that we woodwork. It gives us some satisfaction in life, gives us the ability to create and come up with new concepts and ideas that we didn't think that we would build at a previous point in our life. So that's why we do it, but we got to do it safe. Let's get started. So here's the first one. This is a sliding miter saw. You've seen them before. Most people will have one of these at some point. But the scary thing about these guys is, I'll unlock this. I'll show you the reason why I have it locked. But people get these because they feel like they're safer. But these will actually, if you're going through a big board or a longer board or something that might decide to pinch on it, you can get kickback. And what will happen is you'll go down and the blade will actually launch up and out kind of towards you. So you have to watch out for that. So make sure you keep your hands out of the way. And a good thing that I always do, and I always encourage people to do, is on your sliding miter saw, there's going to be a way to lock that slide. If you do not need to use a slide to get through a board, just lock it. You'll save yourself a big headache and it increases your safety dramatically because the saw can no longer buck on you and come back and bite you. All right, here is the router table. Most people won't have this when they first start off, but eventually you will probably end up getting one because they're really handy. But the biggest thing with the router table is the blade's always exposed like that, and you're running material either by it or sometimes, depending on what blade you're using, directly above it. I see a lot of people on YouTube and stuff not using push blocks, but you should get one because if you're running a piece of material like this, and this thing, because it spins, and it's got a lot of power, it could grab that piece of material and it could launch it out of your hand. If you go, especially on end grain. But if you have, and so what happens is your fingers are running there and then it drops it, and your fingers drop right onto the friggin' thing. And that's it for the tips of your fingers. So get a push block, run it through. If that happens, it's going to fall and hit your push block first, and it'll give you a lot less chance of hurting yourself. As well, when your fence is up here, and I see people doing this and it scares me, they will run a piece of material between the fence and this blade to try and get a profile cut on it. What happens there when that is, now you're causing a pinch point. So if that piece of material moves at all or comes back a little bit, it'll grab and it'll launch that through your wall, just like a table saw. It'll kick back and set material flying. I've seen it happen. You'll be lucky if your fingers don't get sucked in at the same time. So that's some tips on the router table. If there's anything else I'm missing on the router table that I'm not thinking of right now, leave a comment for us because you're going to help a lot of people out who don't actually have experience with that. But yeah, router table, use a push block. The $30 or whatever these are is a lot cheaper than a few weeks off of work if you have to use your hands at work. So the bandsaw, probably one of the least intimidating tools that in my shop is that I believe anyways. And the reason for that is these things won't really give you a kickback or anything like that. So that is pretty much mitigated unless you really thin strip and you get sucked down into here. So you watch it for that. You might want to make a zero clearance plate. But one of the big dangers with these is when you're cutting here, when you're going up, you don't want to put your hand beside the blade inside of the wood. The reason being is if for whatever reason this guy decides to twist in the wood, whether your saw goes or you have a tooth go bad or something, if you're pushing your hand on this side, so chancy, if you're pushing your hand on this side over here and that happens, it could come out of the wood and go straight in your hand. That's not a good day. These things cut really thick wood and at a very high rate of speed, so your hand's going to go through it like butter. So make sure that you got your hand not beside the blade when you're pushing it through, whether you're in front of it, and being really careful, because if it does come through, you're going to push your board through quite quickly. What I like to do is once I have enough wood behind here, I do like to pull it from behind and guide it through. You can use feather boards and stuff to keep it against the fence. It works great, and it can keep you safe that way. Other than that, they're a lot of fun. You can cut really drastic curves in them if you have a small blade on there. Put a really big blade on, you can go down to the hardware store and get big thick material and resaw it down to an easier to manage size. So yeah, that's a bandsaw. The jointer. Oh man, this thing, these have claimed lots of fingertips over here. I'm gonna grab a board. Grab our test board here. These things have definitely claimed a few fingers. When you're running your stuff through the jointer, always you'll see which direction. Mine spins that direction, but so I always feed from the right to the left. See this guard? Use it. Use the guard. People say it gets in the way. It doesn't really get in the way. You just adjust to the size that's pretty close or even touching. Or a lot of jointers have like an automatic one. You don't have to worry about it. If this style, like I do, use that. Use a push block on top, because you never know when something happen. It gets stuck, and now you're trying to run your finger behind here to get some grip to push it through, and you rake your tips of your fingers over that. So I want to talk about planers. Planers are relatively safe because it feeds the board through for you. So your hands aren't actually ever really near the blades in them. But make sure that the board's going to be long enough to come through the other side so you can grab it, so you're not reaching inside of the machine. I've corrected a few people that I've actually had at my shop working with me where they say, oh, I cut this piece, and they go to the planer and they start planing this piece that's like 8 inches long. That's not big enough. That's really not big enough. Make sure it's going to be long. If you need to do an 8-inch piece, a couple or multiple of them, do a long board first, get it planed, and then cut it to the right length, because I do not want to see anybody get their fingers cut off in a planer, because your hand shouldn't ever go inside of it. But people don't know, and you make mistakes. It's normal to make mistakes. That's why I'm making this video, so you can lower the amount of mistakes you could make. Okay, so we're on to the table saw. Table saw is next to the router table. Is probably one of the most dangerous tools in your shop, because the reason it's dangerous is not just one way to use it. As you change what side of the blade you're cutting on, your fence has to do different stuff. And if you do it wrong, you get kickback, get smoked with a piece of wood at best when it comes to kickback. At worst, maybe get impaled by a piece of wood or get your fingers stuck on a saw. I'm not trying to scare you away from the table saw, because it is an amazing tool, and there's lots and lots of use for it. You could probably use it the most of any tool in your shop when it comes to woodworking. So as long as you do it safely, there's a lot of tips here. So let's get to it. Alrighty, raise this guy up. So there's lots to cover on the table saw. You can run your piece through against the fence. Let me grab a piece of scrap here. You will do. If you're running a large piece through like this, you don't want wider than this piece on this side of the blade while you're cutting it off. It's not always, especially with brand new sheets, it's not always avoidable. One thing, if you have somebody helping you, it's a lot safer. But the best thing to do would be to take your skill saw and run it off, let's say an inch or so, maybe a little less even, just to kind of do your rough cut, and then run it through here to cut that piece safely. Otherwise, what happens is it'll want to rotate. As you pull it, this end over here will want to slide back because there's more pressure, and it'll want to turn your piece like that. And then it grabs the back of your blade. If you don't have a riving knife, but it can still happen. Riving knives don't completely eliminate kickback, but you can grab there and twist and buck this piece. It'll pull this piece up over top and kick that right back at you at the equivalent power and RPM of your table saw. So this is a 1 3/4 horse because I don't have the power available for a bigger one. But yeah, so that means you're getting quite a kick on that, more of a kick on an even powerful one. The next thing that can happen with these guys is, and this is where other people are going to get thrown off a bit. So I'm going to grab a different piece. It's a little smaller piece to make it easier. Let's say you want to cut this piece off. So you're like, well, the best thing to do is to use your miter gauge. Great, good idea. Perfect. So you go and you cut it through. That's totally fine. The problem comes when you're trying to do maybe a slightly bigger piece, and then people end up saying, well, I need to have a stop. Or you're doing multiple pieces, sorry, not a bigger piece, but you're going to do multiple pieces the same size. So then people put their fence like that, and they go to cut, and as soon as now I have this extended piece here that I cut through to help just keep things stable as I'm cutting. But if you're using just this guy, if that's against the fence, when you come off of here, you'll get instant kickback of this piece because it gets pinched between the fence and the blade. And so that what happens is it'll bind and launch that sucker, that mock chicken, hopefully not into your gut, but it might go through your wall or window or whatever's behind you there. Now, so you're thinking, well, how do you mitigate that? Easy. What you do is you build something like, build something like this. This is exactly 5 inches from the back here to that front edge. And then what you do is you clamp this on. You clamp this on like so. You don't have to use that specific clamping, be any clamp. But, and you line it up just with the front of your blade. And what this does is now you can bump that in. And when you cut it, I'm gonna put my blade down so I can show you. when you cut this, as soon as you're fully finished cutting that piece, it's no longer touching. It's no longer touching that blade. So you can't get kickback, because if it does touch the blade and spin, it's just going to spin over this way. And it can't pinch between anything and launch. That is really important. I see lots of people, I've corrected lots of people for not using something like that when doing this exact thing. And I've saved quite a few instances where a piece of lumber will get launched at somebody. So this doesn't have to be 5 inches. It can be 3 inches, 2 inches. I like 5 inches because I just like being farther away from the chance of a kickback on maybe slightly longer little cross cuts. Better yet, build a sled. I built a sled, and I found that I use it once in a while, but I've got a pretty big sliding miter saw, so I don't really use it that often. Another thing that it's not really a safety, as far as I'm aware, well, maybe to a certain point it could be a safety problem, but blade depth on a table saw. What is it? How high should it be? How low should it be? What are the rules on it? And the general rule of thumb is just sticking barely above a piece of your material. Not like, basically, it's this depth here. The bottom of the gullet, that should be ever so slightly below the top of your workpiece as a general rule. Now, you can go up a little bit or down a little bit. That won't change a whole lot. Slightly up is better than slightly down because you're not going to ride up on top of the piece. Other than that, though, that's kind of the general rule. It's not really a major safety thing, but it does help keep the blade not so high out that it's higher risk to your hands. But anyways, yeah. One more thing with the table saw. Always keep your riving knife on, please. That'll save you. If you were going to have a kickback, it'll save you for like 99% of the time. Reason being, your board, once it gets past this front edge here, it cannot twist and rotate on top of the blade. So that is like one of the biggest safety things with it. Always use it, with the exception of using a dado blade. When you get less than, let's say, man, I don't like going any less than about 15 inches. But when you start doing a rip cut that's less than 15 inches or so, get in the habit of using push blocks. They're gonna save you a lot. If you get really narrow and you're not sure what to use, this thing is awesome for cutting little thin pieces where you can't get a push block in there or it's just too awkward. Just the block I made that sits over top of my fence with a little notch on it. You only want to use this when you're getting pretty close to the blade, something like that. Because then you can keep your hand right away from it. Push that piece through. It works awesome. I love it. And I probably just never not have one of those because it's works super slick. One more thing. When you are using a push stick, let's get a slightly wider piece again. Now let's go down like this. Let's say you're going through here and you decide that you're going to use a push stick to push through because you don't have anything else. When you push with that, don't push back here on this side away from the blade. What that'll do is that when you push back there, you'll see this gap. I'll put it tight again. When you push on this back side here, close to the fence, you actually push that wants to come out up there. and it pushes it into the blade, and you could get a kickback. See, I'm actually got stuck on the front edge of those blades. So what happens is you actually get a kickback before you get to your riving knife. What you want to do, actually leave that there just for demonstration purposes, but take a push stick and push on this side. And what that'll do is that'll keep that top edge tight against your fence the whole way through. And it'll save you a chance of kickback. You'll get straighter cuts, and you actually get to use what feels like less pressure when you're cutting, because you're not pushing it into the side of the blade, causing excess friction. You get less burning and all that fun stuff. I probably missed something on the table saw. I feel like I'm missing something, but I can't think of it right now. If you're watching this and you think of something that I missed, leave a comment below, because you're going to help somebody and possibly keep somebody from getting injured, and that's what it's all about. Okay, on to the drill press. Last one that at least I have in my shop. Please comment if you have other tools in your shop that I don't have that need to be addressed. But anyways, drill press, very simple tool, very easy to not take seriously, but there can be a few things that happen, but not very common. But if they do happen, it is not fun. So let's do it. So with the drill press, generally if it's a piece or whatever that's nice and long, you have a lot of strength to hold it over there, but you don't have a lot of control of the material. So most people end up holding it here, which is technically fine for not getting cut. But the issue is, if you're doing, let's say you're drilling through a big piece of hardwood, or not using a small bit like that, and you're using like a 1.5 or 2 inch bit or something like that, if it binds, the drill press is way stronger than you are, and it's going to rip it out of your hands and make that piece spin around like crazy. So if you can, if you can on a small piece, if you can clamp it to your drill press, that will save your finger from having ever getting spun around and breaking your finger or something like that, or even just hurting a lot. If your piece is long enough, like this piece, for example, if it's long enough, just butt it into, so if your drill press spins this way, just butt that long piece into that bar there. And if it does catch and want to spin, it's not able to whip around and hit you. Wood isn't so bad, but you can definitely get into trouble with metal. If you're drilling metal in your shop for a project and that whips around, that'll hurt your hand or your wrist or whatever that piece comes in contact to real bad. So that's all I have on the drill press. I only use it for drilling holes. I don't do anything crazy. Like I've seen some people try and set up to work as a makeshift lathe. I don't recommend that. I think that's using the tool outside of what it's meant to do. So I don't recommend it at all. But yeah, that's the drill press. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you got something out of the video. Like I said in a few clips, if there's anything at all that you think I missed that should be addressed in a safety video, send me a message. I'll make a video on it, or just leave a comment. Let's make sure that all the people getting into woodworking this year are safe and have a good understanding of how these tools work and how they can be dangerous, but most importantly, how to use them safely so they can go on for years without incident. So thanks so much, guys. Have a great weekend.